Corey Lewandowski is having a big-time comeback. It's just under 2 years ago. Lewandowski, combative, controversial, was unceremoniously dumped as Donald Trump's first campaign manager after he had essentially guided him to the brink of the nomination. Those were some dark days for Lewandowski, but as with many people who the president gets rid of, he did remain on sort of the fringes of the orbit. Then they continued to talk. The president continued to seek his advice. And now, according to my sources, if the White House Chief of Staff's job should become open, Lewandowski is a candidate for that job. The president has actually discussed the possibility of Corey Lewandowski becoming his White House Chief of Staff. Now, it's probably unlikely that will happen, and I'll explain why in a moment. First of all, let's look at why the job might be open. It's no secret in Washington, in the White House, anywhere really, that John Kelly has a very strained relationship right now with his president. Kelly came in on kind of a high, the general who was going to impose military discipline on the White House, and that worked for a while. But inevitably, there were strains between the president and the general. And that was exacerbated this week when NBC reported that story that Kelly, according to unnamed sources, repeatedly referred to Donald Trump as an idiot. And Kelly put out a statement saying that's total BS and they have a candid relationship, kind of a little Diplo speak there. My sources say there's no imminent breach coming up, but nobody really expects Kelly to last that much longer. So Lewandowski is somebody who makes Trump comfortable. And he has been traveling with the president on political trips, and at the weekend rally in Michigan, he actually was called up to the stage. And the president was praising him. You've seen Corey on TV, and Corey has only had one campaign, and he won it, so he's 1 for 1, kind of airbrushing the fact that he was then fired. And so here's the situation if this were to come to a head. Lewandowski, I think, is reluctant to take the job based on what I'm hearing from my sources. For one thing, it would be a huge pay cut. He spent about the last 2 years building a business as a Washington consultant, doing the speaking circuit and all of that. At the same time, you know, it would be very, very hard for a guy as close to the president as Corey to turn it down if the president offered it. Also, Corey's got 4 kids to support, and so, you know, the lucrative lure of the private sector is not inconsiderable. At the same time, Lewandowski knows, people in the White House tell me that if this job were to go to Corey Lewandowski, that as much as half the staff would quit. It's not so much that they have a visceral dislike for the guy, although some may not like Corey Lewandowski. But some in the White House believe that with no government experience, that he simply doesn't have the ability to handle as challenging and complex a job as Chief of Staff. And if that happened, Corey would want to bring in his own people and there'd be wholesale turnover. So the president knows that if he were to go this route, to make this change, he would essentially be blowing up his White House staff. You don't just bring in one person at the top. There'd be a lot of wholesale changes. But the president is focused on the midterms. And he does obviously, you know, with the increasing possibility that Democrats may take the House, at least. I think he wants a more politically attuned chief of staff. But the downside there, if Lewandowski would end up doing this, is that if the Republicans get clobbered in November, he would get much of the blame. So it's probably, the odds are against this happening, but it's not impossible. As I say, they've discussed it. It's also possible if Kelly leaves, that the president will have no chief of staff, or will appoint somebody who's not really going to run the staff, but be more of an outside ambassador to the world. But no matter how you slice it, given the level of advice, the traveling together, the fact that he's sort of back in the inner circle, whether he gets the title or not, Lewandowski is back as a trusted advisor to President Trump, who, as you know, sometimes runs through advisors rather quickly. Sometimes being on the outside, on the fringes of Trump world, is the safest place to be.